Well, I've managed to grab one of the speakers from this morning at the seminar, and it was quite a thought-provoking session this morning. And what you were doing was basically trying to talk through how we can make the most of what looked like a bad situation, how you can keep sports surfaces workable in the climate change that we're hearing about. And you managed, one man with a prop because you had a bucket and a sponge with you.
I did indeed. Like a lot of things, you can make things like how water moves through soil very complicated and difficult to understand. You know, if you even utter the phrase soil water physics, for instance, most people glaze over instantly. So I think if you're trying to educate people, particularly from non-specialist backgrounds, what you want to do is take people on a journey and make that knowledge as accessible as you possibly can. Almost so you're learning by accident, if you know what I mean. And so that was the point, because you're right. When in an environment where water is going to become more scarce, where irrigation requests are going to be scrutinised in much more detail, and in fact, water authorities might well be saying no to irrigation water requests, then what do we do? You know, how can we manage what we've got to maximise the rainfall we receive or the watering that we do? And you know, within the soil environment, critical to that is the pores in the soil, and understanding how operations that we do as managers affect that pore size distribution, because that affects how much water is available to the plant, and that affects how affected it is by drought. So yeah, you're right. And I always find a sponge is a fine way of communicating.
Well, my favourite word is evapotranspiration.
Oh, there you go.
Which is, I try and say it as often as I can, but it's no good for like a countdown because too many letters in it.
Yeah, terrible. And Scrabble. It's not particularly helpful there, is it really?
Exactly.
No.
So, I mean, I think it was great to learn what we did do this morning, because it's better knowing than not knowing, but it was quite thought-provoking, I think, what they were talking about climate change-wise and temperature-wise. And it is going to have a huge impact.
It is. Yeah, and there's no avoiding that. And I think sometimes it's just easier to ignore it, isn't it, rather than try and address how we're going to cope and manage with that. But of course that gets us nowhere. You know, we just defer thinking about the issue until it's literally in our face, and there is no more time. So thinking about things now, and particularly if you're thinking of major projects like drainage schemes, for instance, it's pointless to think about a drainage scheme without thinking about the implications that's going to have on that same piece of ground in the summer when it's dry. Because you stick a drainage scheme in the ground, if it's well designed and works, the inevitable consequence of that is it's going to be drier in the summer. And if that's going to cause you problems, then you have to think about irrigation, or you have to think about your drainage design. And you might have to come to a compromise. But you're daft not to think about it.
Well, it's going to keep you busy, isn't it? I mean, if you've got solutions out there for golf clubs and cricket pitches and sports grounds, they're going to have to call on somebody like you who knows what you're talking about.
Well, I don't know if I know what I'm talking about. It's one of those things, isn't it? As an academic, you always have to be a bit careful, because you can demonstrate things in a laboratory setting. But when you take what you do in a laboratory to the real world situation, it's more complicated. And that's where a sort of an interdisciplinary approach is really important. You need to work with good practitioners who are experts in their field in terms of how you manage a surface, and look and chat with them about what they're doing, what they're trying to achieve. You know, take your scientific knowledge by all means and apply it to that situation. But I think that's going to be the key going forward, is getting some good interdisciplinary teams that have greenkeepers and ground staff right at the heart of them, and come to an approach which, yes, admits the compromises, admits the areas where we don't quite know, but works that towards a workable solution. I think that's probably a better way than trying to buy an off-the-shelf solution.
Well, I think this morning you were able to sort of put that message across to 200 delegates in there, so hopefully you've managed to put a few thoughts and a few minds.
Well, I hope so, yes. Yeah.
Well, great to get a chance to speak to you.
Yeah, and
it was a long time since we'd
last
met, way back.
Yeah, it has, a long time ago.
But I say
we're older and wiser, aren't we?
We are indeed. Whether the wiser bit, I don't know, but certainly older. Anyway, lovely to speak to you. Thanks very much.
Scott, thank you.
Thank you.